Hello, everyone. Welcome to the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Tuesday, September the 5th. Roll call, please.
Corey Coots.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Bruce Pauley.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
And Lori Gross. Here.
Got a full house tonight. Everybody's here. Can we have, has everybody looked at the minutes and any questions? If not, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approval of minutes carries on. We have 3 items tonight. The first item is docket number 2359. Rita Bradley is requesting a development standard variance to reconstruct the front porch of her home located at 929 Jackson Street. The property is zoned SF2, single-family residence, and UDO section 4.6, lot standards, it's a front setback. Ben? Matt?
I'm going to take this one tonight. Bruce, good evening, board, and welcome to the thousands of people watching from home tonight. First item is, Mr. Pauley indicated, we have Bradley residence located at 929 Jackson Street. If we want to go ahead and pull up the aerial here, and we'll get you acclimated to where we're at, and we'll get into the details. The property in question is located on the southeast side of town. We have Indianapolis Avenue along the eastern side, Noble Street just to the north. Just last month, we had the Lebanon Church of Christ before you, so literally the property just to the north of what we discussed last month. The applicant currently has a front porch that was damaged in the recent hailstorm. Unfortunately for her, the roofing materials that are used on this front porch are no longer manufactured, and the siding is no longer in production, so she's having to remodel the entire front of the house. And so she's going to take the opportunity, I'll pull the street view up. As you can see, it is an enclosed front porch. The applicant is actually looking to just simply replace the siding and add a gabled roof line to the porch. So it would be a gabled roof line tied into the existing roof on the back of the structure. The issue that we've run into is the current front porch sits 3 feet into the front building setback. So in the SF2 zoning district, we have a 25-foot front setback for structures. The current structure is 22 feet from the front setback, and the applicant is looking for relief tonight to build replace the existing front porch, which is legally existing, non-conforming, with the new porch in the exact same footprint. So again, tonight the applicant's looking for relief from the UDO section 4.6.d front building setback. Again, this is 22 feet versus 25 feet. Well, just for the record, we have gone through the statutory criteria and done the evaluations of all of the criteria, and I'll kind of walk through those just real quick. The first is relief from the front building setback would not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. There will still be more than sufficient visibility along Jackson Street there along the north with the encroachment by the proposed front porch. The second criteria, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The project is proposed is a significant aesthetic improvement to the existing subject home, and that should actually increase the property values in the area. In addition, the proposed porch would sit within the exact same footprint as the existing porch, so it would be the exact footprint, just a modified front of the home with a gabled roof line. And then lastly, the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties of the use of the property. The applicant's proposing to improve the subject property by replacing a hail-damaged patio roof with a new gabled roof within the exact same footprint. Thus, the overall conditions on the property would not change with this particular improvement. In addition, the proposed encroachment is very similar to front setbacks, as you see at the property directly next door to the east and also across the road. So in review of all the statutory criteria, the City of Lebanon Planning staff does recommend approval of the development standard variance request to permit relief from the front setback requirement of the UDO. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
With this being, I guess, an act of God and not increasing size at all, kind of be grandfathered in, why wouldn't one of those work?
Sure. So the existing porch, as I mentioned, is legally existing, non-conforming, but because so much has to change to the structure itself, it triggers a building permit. And in order to get a building permit, the variance would be required. So the property would have to be in compliance with the UDO standards versus, so if she wanted to do a straight rebuild, the structure of the front patio, the new patio, would have to be 3 feet narrower. So the property, the subject, or the property owner is looking to just build in the exact same footprint, thus the variance request to get relief from that.
Okay. Any other questions? Sir?
You're welcome.
Rita, you have anything you want to add to that? I'm good. Okay. This is a public meeting. Does anybody from the public care to step forward and say anything? Okay, we'll close the public end of the meeting and look for a motion.
I make a motion to approve docket 23-59 as written.
Second.
Okay, Kelly?
Corey Coots?
Yes.
Chad Kiger?
Yes.
Bruce Polly?
Yes.
Ron Edwards?
Yes.
Lori Gross? Yes.
Passes. Congratulations. Okay, docket number 2360 is GM Development Companies LLC. The property is at 1430 West State Road 32 here in Lebanon. The property is currently zoned planned business industrial and comprised of 8.92 acres. Ben, it's your turn.
It is my turn. We'll give this one a shot here. For those that have been on the board for a little while, you probably remember this property. This is actually the property that the Lebanon Redevelopment Commission partnered to build a shell building. And the benefit of that is it's all about timing as when it comes to leads that are looking at properties like this. And so by the city partnering with the private development, we got the property, we got the building under construction. That helps the potential leads looking at this building to speed the market, which is really important. So it's just now under construction. We've got steel going up, but we do have a really solid lead that is interested in this property. And it is an advanced manufacturing company. They manufacture inputs for aerospace and alternative energy markets. So it's the right type of tenant we've been looking for. Potential significant investment in this site. But when looking at their manufacturing processes, there's some variances that they would need to have in place before they could really even consider this site. If they can't get the variances that we're requesting, essentially on their behalf tonight, this site's just not viable for them. Those are building height, and I'll go through them a little bit more specifically here in a second. Due to their manufacturing processes, they actually have a 3-story tall building, and each story is about 25, 30 feet in height. And the manufacturing process actually starts up on the 3rd floor and works its way down to the bottom floor, and then actually goes back up to the top floor. But they need that height in order for the process to work properly. So they are looking for additional building height here, about 80 feet. Where the zoning district would only allow 50. And I'll show you some more details here in a second on that. The second one is mechanical equipment screening. And they have a couple of different, I'll show pictures here in a second as well, in these, a couple different locations where they would need mechanical equipment on the exterior of the building, that again, specific to their process, like dust collectors, noise reducers, and then there's also a series of gas tanks that are inputs to their production process. Where the height of those, the standards right now would require any sort of screening for mechanical equipment to be at least 2 feet taller than the equipment. Well, some of that equipment is about 50 to 60 feet tall, and the other equipment's about 80 feet tall. So now we're talking about installing 80-plus foot tall walls to try to screen these, and that's just not really a feasible process. Some of that equipment they've got to be able to get to pretty regularly too, so it's not feasible to be able to screen it in that way. So we're looking at a couple different things here, and I'll show you here in a second how we're going to accommodate that, but they have requested relief from that screening requirement to look at some alternative methods of screening, and in fact, even placement of that to screen it by the buildings. And then again, a related request, variance request number 3 is for accessory equipment height. All accessory buildings and equipment are limited to 18 feet, which again, as we talked about, some of these range from 50 to 80 feet tall. So again, they're requesting relief from that height requirement to allow some of the equipment that I'll show you here in a second. And the last one is maximum lot coverage. I'll show you a conceptual site plan here in a moment. The UDO would allow a maximum lot coverage of 75%. Meaning that the remainder would either have to be open space, or in a lot of cases on all these sites, that's detention. A lot of that 25% will be detention. And this site actually is not required to do their own detention because it's in a regional detention area. So they're really looking to try to maximize the site, and would like to request maximum lot coverage variance up to allow up to 85%, which would essentially account for the fact that they don't have to do detention. But I'll show you a site plan here in a second, and I think we don't know, they obviously haven't designed a site yet because they haven't selected this site yet. They're still looking at several different locations. It is possible when they finally design the site that they don't need this variance, but this is something they wanted to put in place to allow them to at least consider this site and the improvements that they're suggesting, or would conceptually suggesting here. So let me pull up a conceptual site plan here for you. Some of this may look familiar. This large orange box is the 50,000 square foot shell building that's under construction right now. And then our plan had included a parking lot that would be in the front of the building, and then a couple of dock doors along the side. And the remainder essentially would just remain open so that it would have the ultimate flexibility for a future user. And as you can see here, that some of the things that they're proposing would modify our site a little bit. The first thing is that they would be proposing an office building that would attach to the 50,000 square foot shell. So this would primarily be manufacturing in the shell building, and then all their office components would be contained in this separate pod that would be next to that. They would also intend, as part of phase 1, to build out to the full 82,000 square feet of this first shell building site on the northwestern corner here, and that would be what would be phase 1. Phase 2 for a future phase would be 30,000 square feet that you see here in the back, and this is the portion that would be 80 feet tall, this 30,000 square foot portion, and then there would be 50,000 square feet that would be out front, that this would be more of a standard, about 40 to 50 feet tall, that would meet our requirements. So they are looking to place the tallest part of the building as far back as they can. And then they're also looking at in potential future phases for additional parking for employees out front along State Road 32. The equipment that I mentioned would be in 2 locations. One would be to the west side of the shell building. This equipment would be about 50 feet or so tall. Let me make sure I'm quoting the correct numbers here. I believe let me go to the next slide because I think it says. This would be the equipment that you would see to the side of the building. There would be a silencer for noise dampening, backup generator, air purification. This is actually the air purification system you see here. And you can see that this is a standard height, about 40-foot tall building. So none of this really extends beyond the roof line of the building. So it would kind of be hidden next to the building. This here is one of their existing sites, and it just shows more of a standard privacy fence, but they had indicated that they would be able to screen this to a height of 8 feet with more of an architectural type screening method than you see here, so it would be something a little bit nicer than that. And they'd be able to go to 8 feet, which would be just slightly taller than what this fence is now. We had also suggested some strategic placement of some evergreens like arborvitae to help screen that as well. But they do need to be able to get quick access to this area, so that's why they see more of the fencing with the gates like you see here. And then we'd use landscaping to provide some additional screening. In particular, let me go back to the previous page, from the west and south around this edge here. Certainly the building is going to screen your vehicle if you're coming westbound, but if you're coming eastbound, you'll be able to see that area. So we'd be looking at trying to install some additional screening along this property line that you see here. The second area where there would be equipment, and these would be the taller tanks that here, and these are actually industrial gas supply tanks that are inputs into their manufacturing process. So they have a series of tanks, and these are 80 feet tall. And that's why we had discussed with them the idea of, went back to the wrong page, placing those behind the 80-foot tall building. So one benefit of there being an 80-foot tall building here, while it does need a variance for the height, is the equipment that would be necessary for that building would actually be behind the building where you wouldn't be able to see it from State Road 32 at all. So again, we talked about maybe some additional screening that you might see to the west here, and you can see to the northeast is where the creek, and it's heavily wooded, so they wouldn't really need any screening from this side. But maybe some additional screening just to try to protect this area here to the west from visibility. But the building itself does provide a significant amount of screening to that area. So this is the overall site, and I've kind of walked through the requests related to the accessory equipment, and actually Greg Martz is here from GM Development. He was going to walk you through. They've got a little bit of they haven't designed the buildings necessarily, but they got a little bit of a blocking plan that shows you the varying heights of the buildings, and I'll have him go through that for you here in a second. But did want to walk through these 4 requests here. I won't walk through all of the statutory criteria for all 4 of these for you here because we don't want to listen to me for the next 10 minutes. But I will just point out that those are available in the staff report for the record. And I'm trying to remember, so in terms of variance request for number 1 for building height, we have recommended approval of that variance request for the additional building height up to 80 feet, and that would be with the condition that the applicant uses architectural design elements to limit the visual impact of the increased height, such as muted colors or tones on the actual building itself, and windows or other elements that might break up the monotonous facade. And that would be on that additional height that I showed you to the back. This building, you'll see in the blocking panel, Greg will show you here in a second, there'll be a facade that you'll see above the front building, and that would be where we would expect them to use some architectural design elements to help just kind of break up what would be a taller facade there. And so that again, for the building height variance request, we do recommend approval subject again to the applicant using architectural design elements to limit the visual impact of the increased height. Variance request number 2, it is mechanical equipment screening, and that would allow them to use about an 8-foot tall architectural walls or screens, as opposed to it being at least 2 feet taller than the mechanical equipment screening. Again, the statutory criteria included in the staff report for the record, and we have recommended approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the mechanical equipment screening requirement, subject to the following condition. And that would be that the applicant would modify the site landscape plan to place evergreen plantings, such as arborvitae and strategic locations around the equipment areas to screen from adjacent properties. And this plan must be submitted and approved by staff prior to issuance of any building permits. And again, just to kind of go back to the site plan, so the area in question this would be the outside equipment that's about 40 to 50 feet tall, and we would be looking to install some additional landscape screening around this area so it would be less visible from State Road 32. And in the case of this equipment that would be behind the building, which would primarily screen it, we would just be looking at essentially along this northwestern corner to provide some additional screening to that area. So that would be addressing that condition on that recommendation. And then the final one then is go back to the proper page here, would be the maximum lot coverage. And again, we have addressed all the statutory requirements in the staff report for the record. And finally, then, the planning staff has recommended approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the maximum lot coverage requirements of the UDO to allow the site design you see here. In fact, like I said, once this is fully designed, they may not even need that variance request because there is a decent amount of open space you still see on this lot. But again, on a typical site design, this entire back of this property likely would be detention. But because we're not required to do detention here because we're in the regional detention, that allows you some additional flexibility to maximize the space on the lot, and that's why we had recommended approval of that. Again, this will allow this potential client to consider this site. Like I said, they've got about 3 or 4 locations overall that they're considering. The only way they could consider this site is with these variances in places first. So this is really just kind of setting the stage to allow them to make that decision, hopefully sometime in the near future. So that's a quick rundown of the requests. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I don't think anybody has anything.
I just want to confirm, so on the staff report, I'm looking at it right now, each of your conditions, if you will, are listed in the staff report under the given variance.
Correct.
It'll make the motion a lot easier.
Yeah, I guess we could either do a motion on each request individually or
That's what I wondered.
just to make sure we get the conditions placed on the right request, because I've got one condition on the building height, one condition on the accessory equipment screening, and then one condition
But if we were to reference the staff report, it is written.
Yeah, the conditions are all written in there, so you could just reference the conditions in the staff report generally. That would also work. In case you don't want to do 4 different recommendations or motions.
Ben, is there any change in elevation on the west side of the property, the parcel there, in terms of, is there a berm or anything that would add additional screening?
There is not, so that's why we're looking to do some of the landscaping. So the city of Lebanon actually owns the property to the west of that area, but it may actually be needed for flood storage depending on how this site develops out, because there is some floodplain in this northeast corner. So we may have to, that may be an area where we're doing the compensatory storage for the floodplain. But so that's why we're looking essentially along that property line to try to do some additional evergreen screening, because there's not a whole lot of room along that property line for a mound. It just, with the room we've got there, you're really only talking about maybe a 3-foot mound that we'd have space for. now.
Well, it takes a long time too for trees to grow to be 40,
For sure.
40 feet tall, yeah.
Yeah, and the arborvitaes do grow for pretty fast. I mean, you can
Yeah.
plant 6-footers and they'll be 10 plus feet pretty
And you
quickly.
can stagger them too, so that they
Correct.
provide 100%
Yep,
screening.
yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
How about the southwest corner of the parcel? Any screening requirements there?
You mean along State Road 32
Yeah.
or, so yeah, there would be.
Because it's still going to be visible as you're,
For sure. Yeah, so we'll screen them as best we can up around that area, but there would be the typical thoroughfare overlay screening requirements that would be required along State Road 32. So, and some of you again may recall that the property right now is really just the back 2/3, and there are 2 additional lots out front that aren't under GM Development's control right now. So this area of future parking is not on parcels right now that are owned by GM Development. So that would be something that would have to come back in the future and make sure that they meet all of the landscaping requirements, et cetera, at that time.
the other question I had was, it says future 30,000 square foot, future, I can't remember what the other one was, but assuming that those are going to be built at the same time. And
Yeah,
then
this-
the one
this-
on the northwest side was future, right?
Yeah, so
Expandable.
this, if they want to pull the screen back up again. So this area to this northwest, that would be phase 1. So what's shown is expandable to 82,000 square feet. I believe the intention would be to build that out all in phase 1. And then everything that you see over here on the east side would be a future phase 2.
Okay.
Including both the 50 and 30. That's all one building. That's just
Right.
kind of, it looks like it's
Okay.
kind of shown as 2 separate buildings. It's essentially one building or one phase of construction.
Okay, thank you. Applicant, want to step forward and add anything?
Good evening. My name is Greg Martz. My last name is spelled M-A-R-T-Z, for the record. I did have one thing. I'll actually greatly reduce what I was going to say because Ben did such a terrific job there. So I really only have one point to make, which is I thought this would be an interesting thing for you all to see. It's obvious here where the portion is that we're asking for the height variance, which is that back building. And the reason I wanted to show you this is so that you could get a feel for that. The high part is going to be tucked back towards the back part of the lot. And the other thing that we were really trying to do here was create sort of a stepping feature so that it doesn't feel like it's just something right up on the road that's in your face. And I think when you look at this, you can kind of see how by doing that, it takes down the building, I guess, if you want to say it that way. And in some ways, that shorter building on the second phase will provide a little bit of a screen for that for the larger building. So again, this was really the only thing I wanted to show in addition to what Ben had, just so that, because I know that it would be a much different conversation if it was 80 feet right up on 32, or if it was 80 feet, that was 300,000 square feet. And then the only final note I wanted to say was that I do feel that all the suggestions that staff is making will be just fine with this user. They all seem very practical to me. And so I think that if you were to approve staff recommendations, I'm very confident that that will keep us in the running with this user. And then the final thing I wanted to let you know is that we should hear fairly quickly on this as well. So we'll keep you updated, but we're hoping, obviously, you've had a lot of exciting announcements here over the last year, and we're hoping this will be the next one. But we'll, assuming you do approve this, we'll keep you updated so that you know that we made it to the next step here. So thank you very much.
Questions?
Ben, I'm assuming this doesn't fall within a gateway and subjected to any additional gateway ordinances?
It does, so the front lot, if they were to include the front lots, that would put it in one of the thoroughfare overlay districts.
Okay.
Now, and you may recall, we did get a variance for the materials we used on the initial building, because we're actually doing, it's like an insulated metal panel. It's kind of a newer type of material that some buildings are using. So we did get a variance for that very reason, because it's in the thoroughfare overlay district and has a certain masonry requirement. So because that variance is already in place, it would allow the building to be able to be constructed so that it all matches.
Matches,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
The existing steel that's vertical is still compliant, right? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will open the meeting to the public. If anybody wants to address it, please step forward. Close the public end of the meeting, and
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4 variance requests with the conditions that are listed in the staff report.
I would second.
Okay. Corey Coots?
Yes.
Chad Kiger?
Yes.
Bruce Polly? Ron Edwards?
Yes.
Lori Gross? Yes.
carries. Congratulations. Good luck. We have one final item tonight that Matt is going to talk about. It is docket 2361. Matt Howard is requesting 2 development standard variances to construct a detached accessory structure on his property located at 3516 East, 400 South. The property is zoned single-family residential.
All right, guys. Last item for tonight. This is going to sound pretty familiar because I think this is at least the second one, if not the third request that I've done for accessory structures before this board tonight, or not tonight, but in the past. So we're actually moving to the far south side of town. The address, we're down here at 3516 East, 400 South. Interstate 65 is just off to the east here, and Whitestown is Whitestown and Zionsville kind of across the street. The applicant is proposing an accessory structure to be built in the back of the property in the area that I've highlighted here, or I'll show you on a plot plan here in a moment. The UDO allows the property or allows a property owner to build an accessory structure that is 50% the size of the primary structure. The home on this lot is approximately 3,804 square feet. So that would allow a 1,902 square foot accessory structure. The applicant's looking to construct a 2,000 square foot pole barn. So the variance request before you tonight is for relief from accessory structure area for the 98 additional square feet. And I'll pull up the plot plan here. So as you can see, we've got the home in the center here. The proposed pole barn is to be located on the northeast corner. It does meet all of the side, front, and rear setback requirements of the UDO, but the size of 2,000 square feet needs a variance. And then the applicant's also requesting a variance for accessory structure height. I've been mentioned in the previous docket item, 18 feet is the height of the tallest accessory structure that the UDO allows. The applicant is requesting relief for that for a 23 feet in height, so an additional 5 feet in height. And that is proposed so that it accommodate the storage of a recreational vehicle that the property owner owns. So he needs that additional height in order to store that indoors. We do have some proposed elevations. Let me rotate these here real quick. So we can kind of see here roof line with the front, a couple overhead doors, windows. The other sides of the structure, we've got a little patio, as you can see on the side. This sits significantly far enough off the road that You won't see a lot of it. Again, it is going to be a 2,000 square foot pole barn, but it sits at least 150 feet from the next nearest residential property or nearest residential structure. So staff felt comfortable in recommending approval of both the maximum accessory structure size or area, as well as the accessory structure height. And we don't necessarily need to go into all the details, but as far as the statutory criteria, but I will, for the record, explain that staff did review all the statutory criteria. We evaluated the not being injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner, and nor, or will also the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties if we were to require the property owner to stick to the UDO standards. So staff is recommending approval of both the variance to request relief from the accessory structure area and also variance to request relief from the accessory structure height. And I'll gladly answer any questions, should you have any about this particular application. I guess one thing I did fail to mention, my apologies, is that this property, as I mentioned, is on the far south end of town, a large open rural property, and that's one thing that our UDO does not take into consideration, and that's in the past, the items that have been before you for these accessory structure sizes, is this is technically a rural property in a rural part of our community. The UDO is designed more for the urban suburban parts, so it doesn't take into consideration that somebody may have a large parcel with plenty of open space that could accommodate a larger barn or accessory structure. And I can't really see in this particular photo, but directly across the street is a home with a significantly larger than 2,000 square foot barn as part of the property. So again, we're in a part of town that is more rural, that is not necessarily addressed in our Unified Development Ordinance. The UDO typically just considers the suburban and urban developments within our city.
Matt, how big is the parcel?
The parcel is 2 acres.
Your height requirement, I noticed that there's a couple of cupolas on the barn. Is that worked into the height? Do you take that into consideration?
Let me pull the elevations up and see. I may have to have the applicant address that. 16.7. It does not. If you look here, my cursor on the top left here, that indicates the 23-foot height, which comes across just about to the peak of the roof.
Okay.
Typically, the cupolas or weather vanes or things like that beyond the roof are exempt from it's not part of the height requirement. We measure to the peak of the roof, not necessarily to the top of the cupola or weather vane or other things that might be on top of a barn.
Okay. Birds that are setting up there and so forth. Okay, any other questions?
A pat on the back for knowing what that word meant. Congratulations.
Does the applicant have anything to add?
Yeah, Matt did a good job explaining.
Okay, did I open this to the public? Okay, we need to have the public in. Does anybody from the public want to step forward and state their opinion? Okay, we'll close the public into the meeting.
I move we approve docket number 23-61.
Second.
Corey Kuntz,
Yes.
Chad Kiger,
Yes.
Bruce Polly,
Yes,
Ron Edwards,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
carries. Congratulations. Good luck. That's all we have on the docket for tonight, unless anybody else has something to bring up.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next meeting is October the 2nd, 7 PM. Here in this room, meeting is adjourned.